Hello, everybody. Welcome into debate night. We are back. Had a little 1 week hiatus. I was ill, my bad. But we are back now. Got a great cast. Some interesting topics tonight. Going to dive into a lot of FPO stuff because we had some interesting FPO things go down. One in particular that we're going to get to at the top of the show. But should be a fun episode. Lots to discuss. Maybe some heated opinions. We'll see where things go. But Brody is here, looking young. Looking beardless.
I shaved, and I FaceTimed my wife, and it wasn't until the second time that I FaceTimed her that she realized I shaved. The first time she was like, I knew something was weird. She's like, you look different. I couldn't figure out what it was.
That is so funny.
Yeah, it is what it is. It's so hot, and I had to go for a run.
Yeah.
And my timing with touring and stuff, my timing for my runs have been all out of whack. So I'm not able to run in the morning like I normally do. And so I try to run at like 90 or today at like 2 o'clock.
It is 98.
Yeah, it was 98 degrees.
Ugh.
And there's no flat. There's nothing flat. I can't find flat. I'm getting crushed. I'm getting absolutely.
Wait, where are you now? You're in Idlewild?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's still pretty hilly over there.
So I'm trying to and school's back in session. So you have to do track workouts before school starts.
Yeah.
You just gotta get out there at like 5 a.m. That's what I did. I was over at Brookville High School this morning.
I was lifting last night at 11 o'clock in Planet Fitness.
Well, that's what you need to be doing when it's 98 outside, is lifting.
I was playing disc golf. I'm all out of whack. I got like 5 more days and then I'm back to normal. So
long story short, he shaved his face.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Hunter's here as well. What up?
Howdy. Didn't shave my face, but I've tried to multiple times, and Liz always says, please do not. And I'm like, I just want to see. what would happen. So
takes off a lot of years.
These days, who knows?
Takes off a lot of years.
Yeah, most women don't like beardless people. It's weird.
Yeah, well, it's it's one way or the other.
Once you have it, then it's like you can't get rid of it.
Yeah, valid. Dustin joining us. New computer, Dustin.
Indeed. We are on to greener pastures. It's also nice to see that my Brody Smith USCGC storyline is materializing piece by piece. So, yeah, we're going to keep that up.
And what does that mean?
I'm in better shape, shooting better disc golf each tournament. I mean, the progress is there. All right. Listen, it's going to happen.
Hey,
this last term I had 1 okay round.
That's better than 0 okay rounds.
He makes a point. It's a compelling argument. All right. And then Mike is joining us. I find it funny anytime we have a rules discussion, Mike is here. So
PDGA Mike.
I got the email from the PDGA to hop in here this week, so I was forced to.
Yeah, that's interesting. The PDGA potentially under blast, and all of a sudden Mike's signing up. Very interesting.
I also shaved my face like last weekend, similar to what Hunter said. My wife said, don't ever do that again. So that's the last time that's happening, I guess.
There you go. I just
need to make it a punishment for a video. Like when I wanted to shave my legs and I was like, I'll just do it for a social post. We'll just make it a punishment.
Well, guys at our age, like if we shave, we're going to look like we're in high school again. Like it really turns back the clock.
I just want to see it. Like, I don't believe it. I want to see it.
I did it. I haven't had no hair on my face. It had been a long time. And then like last year or some point I went completely bare again, and it was something to behold.
I feel like Connor would be scary without a beard.
Connor, nobody knows what he looks like.
Yeah,
so
that would be.
Yeah,
he might be able to have like a whole second life without a beard that no one would be able to pinpoint.
I don't think I will ever see Connor without a beard.
Connor was just in our ear and he said 1,000 likes, he'll shave his beard.
Oh, okay. 1,000 likes.
That's it.
I don't know how many likes these videos get.
We've thrown out before, like, Connor, if we were able to get a sponsor where it's like, if you win, you get $10,000. If you lose, you have to shave your beard. And he's like, I'd have to think about it.
It'd have to be a huge incentive. Yeah. I mean, it's a big deal.
There's got to be a guarantee incentive. I feel like
that's years and years of growth. All right. Any case, let's get on to the disc golf, what you're here for. So, got to start with the most interesting thing that probably happened this weekend, and that is the Own Scoggins pickup controversy. So if you missed it, sudden death playoff between Valerie Manahano and Own Scoggins. Own putts out on a hole. Valerie's under the basket to tie that hole. She asks to pick up the disc. There's allegedly an acceptance there. She picks it up, starts walking away. Well, you can't really do that. They had to put the disc back, finish the hole. Weird situation. So I don't know your whole take on this controversy. Did she break a rule? Because that's really under scrutiny right now. And then was this situation handled correctly, regardless of the rule being broken or not, by the tournament staff? Brody, what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I think what's happening right now is we're starting to see more occasions of where the PGA needs to tighten up the rule book, because what happened, everyone watching, including the commentators, we were all kind of like, well, we were all just like, what just happened, right? We all had some sort of idea that you weren't supposed to do that and you weren't allowed to do that. And the idea that you can just basically say, oh, it never happened, don't worry about it, and move on. It kind of held like a cloud over it, of where it's like, this is weird. This is something messed up, and we're just going to act like it didn't messed up. Now, I'm sure everyone ran to the rules to actually read and see what went down. And I think this is where the PDGA has their biggest issue, is because in disc golf, they have a rule book. The people that are enforcing the rules are not just the marshals or, Nate Heinel, the TD, but also the players themselves. And so because of that, each player is technically a referee. Now, when you look at the NBA, the NFL, other sports that are officiated, the ref might interpret the rules different than other refs, but they're at least calling it the same for that game, and everyone's playing under those rules. The problem with the PDGA is if I read that rule and I interpret it one way, Trevor, and you read that rule and you interpret it another way, we could be playing on different cards and be playing completely different ways. And I think ultimately looking at it, you can interpret it one way versus the other. And I think ultimately that's the biggest issue.
Yeah, the ambiguity of the language is tough, but I think, I agree. We all knew something had gone down that seemed off and shouldn't have. Hunter, how do you see things?
Yeah, so the rule in question here is Rule 810F. And the language that gets people caught up is the two parts. One, it's a player who intentionally interferes with another player's disc. And the secondary one is it's allowed if it's for retrieval. Right. So that's kind of the two things where people are getting hung up, because some people are saying, A, Owen didn't intentionally interfere, or B, she did intentionally interfere, but it was for retrieval. So where I stand, I talked about this on Grip Lock, is I do think a rule was broken. I do think this rule was broken. But given the fact that in this situation, you had the whole field, literally the whole field that was playing in agreement, because there was just two of them left, and the tournament director was right there, I also do think the right no call was made. Because it was a confusion where you had Valerie like, oh, okay, yeah, we can pick up and move on. It's match play. Owen's like, okay, I'll grab it for you, walk away. And then Heinel's like, hey, look, we got to put that back. So first off, intentionally interfere. I do think that this is an intentional interference, because, I mean, she did interfere with her lie. As of picking it up, that lie was not there anymore. We actually saw Valerie put it back in a place that I think was farther away than where her original lie was. A lie doesn't get there if it's not interfered with. So I don't agree with that point. And then retrieval, I don't agree with that argument, because you can't retrieve a disc that's still in play, which that one is. So there is no retrieval. The retrieval is like, my disc is out of bounds. We all see it OB. I mark, I throw, Trevor picks it up for me. Great. That was retrieval. That's allowed. Picking up a disc in the middle of the fairway is not retrieval. That's not allowed. So I do think Owen intentionally interfered. I don't think retrieval works, but I do think a no call was correct, given that it was this really weird situation where the whole field that was in play being affected had agreed you're good to pick it up. And for the spirit of the game, quote unquote, as people like to throw it out there, I don't think it would have been fair to be like, this is how this tournament and this playoff ends. No player would have been happy with that. They wanted to play it out, and I'm glad it went the way it did.
Okay, Dustin, how do you interpret that language, and do you agree it played out how it should have?
Yeah, I mean, I think in this situation, I can understand the confusion when you're in a two-person playoff that is sudden death, so it's not an aggregate, no other players are involved, that you would kind of feel like you're in a match play situation. And obviously, during match play, this type of action is commonplace to concede whenever you get into these certain situations. This also had zero impact on the result of the whole, and it certainly had zero impact on the outcome of the tournament. And so with that in mind, yes, you can argue the ideas of rules and enforcement and how you interpret language, but the whole thing is, at the end of the day, a big nothing burger to me. And so I really don't care personally. Now, yes, the intentional interference is the key word into this. And yes, Owen intentionally picked up the disc and she did therefore interfere with the lie. But two people are at fault at that point because Owen asks, can I pick it up? Val agrees with her. And so really both people are kind of breaking the rules at that point when I look at it that way. Now, the other big thing to look at here is there's rule 810A that states if a thrown disc has been moved after coming to rest in bounds on the playing surface to a place where it first came to rest as agreed upon by the group. This situation happened when Calvin Lundquist picked up Calvin Heimberg's putter at hole 1 at the Toboggan, where he accidentally just picked up the wrong putter because they looked the same, I believe is what it was. Now, that one you can argue intent because he obviously wasn't trying to pick up Calvin Heimberg's disc. He was trying to pick up his. He just got it wrong. But at the end of the day, they put the disc back where they thought it was best. They played on. No stroke penalty was given. I think this is a similar situation to a degree, and I think they handled it the right way. I think this rule just needs to be worded like, what intent should really mean. Like, is it malicious intent? Is it an accident? That sort of thing I feel like could be covered in the rules a little bit better.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of this hinges on where you place the intent. Is it intend to do something or intend to do something maliciously? Mike, do you agree? Do you think because of the nothingness that resulted from this that it ended up being okay, or is there more that needs to be done to prevent this?
Well, since I'm going last on a yes or no question, I'm going to fill it with some stuff. First of all, I think Dustin's being way too nice, saying that he can see why this could have happened. It's crazy to me that two professional disc golfers thought they could pick up in a non-match play scenario. So that was crazy. And then the other thing is, I wish Owen would have won because this would have been way more exciting to talk about. Or even better yet, I wish it would have just gone and Val threw, because now Val broke a rule. But no rule was broken here, in my opinion. I think there's been talk of like comparing it to Calvin Lundquist, and well, it's not the same because one was on accident, one was on purpose. But really the same thing applies here, where Owen covers the rule here on number 2 of retrieving a disc. Now, she retrieved it prematurely, but in her intent was to retrieve the disc for the competitor. Similar to Calvin Lundquist, didn't intentionally pick up the wrong person's disc, but he thought that disc was done being used, just like Owen, even though incorrectly, thought the disc was done being used. It's the same thing. And so as long as you put the disc back and there's no issue here, moving or obscuring a thrown disc, you have to look at it in that sense of moving a lie or obscuring a lie, taking a lie and putting it somewhere else, or obscuring, hiding a disc so your opponent can't find it. In no means is that what happened here. And so I don't think interference really applies when the intent was to give the disc to the opponent. It's no different than like if I am walking down the course and I pick up a disc and say, oh, it looks like somebody lost their disc, thinking everyone's done. And my opponent goes, oh, no, that's mine. I haven't thrown yet. And I haven't moved, and I put it right back down. No penalties ever given in that situation. And Owen didn't pick it up thinking it was not finished. She thought it was finished. So her intent was to retrieve the disc back to her opponent. So I think there's no rule here. I think what would have been really interesting is if Nate wouldn't have been there and Val goes and throws, because now Val definitely broke a rule by not finishing a hole. I think that would have made this way more of a mess, but I don't think any rule is broken here at all.
Yeah.
Can we talk a little more about this, Trevor? Because
Yeah.
I do think this is a fascinating thing, because I think, I don't know if we're going to talk about the Gannon Burr time violations and all that situation, but it's one of those things of where certain rules are being called, certain rules are being enforced, and other ones aren't. I don't think some of the arguments that you guys made, I don't think they're necessarily great arguments. The idea that, Owen winning this way would have been terrible, and so therefore we shouldn't make that call. I mean, I think it would have been terrible if Val would have missed that putt and Owen wins, but I just don't think you can just not call certain rules because you want the outcome to come a certain way. Ultimately, if Val didn't want to win that way, Val still would have had control to be able to lay up a couple times, to tie the hole, and then go play again. It wouldn't have just been over. Dustin, I don't know how you're confused about that. If Owen got a 2-stroke penalty, Val could have laid up to tie the same score as Owen.
Oh, okay. Laying up twice inside the bullseye would have been kind of weird, but yeah, I guess you're technically right. She could have done that. I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying.
I could see it happening.
If Val didn't
No,
want to
I get
win
what you're
that
saying.
way,
Yeah, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine.
All I'm saying is, to Hunter's point, if you read it, because I think it's really interesting, the word intentionally, with like the Calvin Lundquist thing, like he intentionally pulled it up. He wasn't what's the thing when people say 3, 2, 1, they snap and you're like hypnosis. He wasn't under a spell. There wasn't someone out there controlling his body. He intentionally touched that disc. To me, how I read this rule is if I'm going down the fairway and PDJ's Mike's disc is in the fairway and I trip and fall and I hit his disc and it moves, that was unintentional. Or if I step on his disc not knowing it's in tall grass, that is unintentional. Me looking at a disc in the fairway and picking it up and being like, hey, did anyone lose a disc? I'm intentionally doing that. You know how you don't get stroked and get penalties? Don't pick up the disc. I don't know how that's a hard rule. And so I think they just have to change the rule. If they don't want it to be this way, change the rule. But picking up someone else's disc should be, in my opinion, reading the rules here, is a penalty. I don't see how it's not a penalty with what the rules
Can I play devil's advocate really quick? What if you
Yes.
have two identical discs, and so you're not going to know whose disc it is until you pick it up and look
That's
on the
under
other
the
side
rule.
for a mark?
It's
Oh,
for
okay.
marking. That's
Fair
in the
enough.
rule.
So,
Yeah,
Brody,
you have to
do you
pick the
think
disc up
Cal-
intentionally to figure that out.
Brody, do you think Cal broke a rule then?
Calvin Lundquist,
Yeah.
he intentionally picked up the disc.
But I think it's
But do you
different.
think he broke the rule?
The rule
As
says
road?
you can't. The rule says you can't intentionally interfere with someone else's disc. I think he intentionally. And again,
Okay.
this is where
Well,
everyone
that's
has.
if that's your consistent take, that's fine. But
I don't-
you
but
can't
I-
have one
I
be
disagree.
you can't have one be the other.
I know.
I do, and I'll
You-
explain
that's
why.
you can't.
Hold on, Hunter.
I
real
can,
quick.
and I'll
Hold
explain
on.
it. I can explain it fully. It makes perfect sense.
But at the end of the day, this is why the rules, the PGA needs to fix the wording of these rules, because when I look at intentionally interfering with another player's disc,
Correct.
I think picking up someone's disc, thinking it's yours when
Yes,
it's not,
key.
is intentionally interfering.
It's
You
not
in-
because you thought it was your disc. So you weren't intentionally interfering with another player's disc. You thought it was yours. You were
Right, and-
intentionally
and
interfering
Owen-
with yours.
And
Owen
thought
didn't
the
think
whole
it was her disc.
Owen thought the hole was over, so
but she
was
didn't think it
picking
was
up the
her
disc.
disc.
Right,
And so
but
she was willing to break a different
those
rule.
two discs,
But she didn't think it was her
those two
disc.
discs have the same status. They both are unfinished, right?
Thinking
No,
it's a-
no.
Calvin didn't. How are they not? They're both unfinished, right?
Because Calvin thought he was picking up his own disc. So he was not intentionally
So
interfering
he
with
thought
Calvin
that disc was
Heimberg's,
done being used, right? That's why he picked it up.
which his would have been, correct.
But Owen thought that disc was done being used because the hole was over because she gave it up. They both thought the hole was over incorrectly, and they both incorrectly
No,
picked up the
Calvin
disc.
didn't think it was over incorrectly. His hole was
Yes,
over.
he did. He thought the
just
whole.
grabbed
He
the
thought that
wrong
was his
disc.
disc.
Correct.
Yeah, but
he didn't think the hole was over incorrectly. He
yes,
thought
he
his
did.
disc
He
was
thought
wrong.
he thought he
No.
was picking that disc
was
up
done.
because it was done being used.
Mike, I don't
Correct,
see
he
how you
thought
don't see
that
the
disc
difference
was
between these two
being used.
situations. It's so clear.
He had made his putt, so the hole
Mhm.
was over. He
Right.
thought he was picking up his disc. He
Right.
picked up a disc still in play. Owen, the hole wasn't over. And
But
she
she thought it
intentionally
was
picked
over.
up a disc. That
But she
that
thought it was
doesn't
over.
matter.
I
That's
don't
But
not
she
the rule.
knew for sure
That's
she
not in
wasn't
the
picking
rule.
up her own disc.
She was intentionally interfering with another player's disc.
If
Okay, so then-
hold on. If Val putted that out, let's say Val putted out
Yeah.
and forgot about picking up her disc.
Then fair game.
Owen goes, oh hey, you forgot your disc, and she's retrieving
That's
her disc
allowed.
for her.
Correct.
That's the same status as
Incorrect.
what Owen thought the hole
That
was.
disc isn't in
Owen
play,
thought the
though.
hole was
that
over.
disc isn't in play.
But
That's
she
my
thought
view.
it was
Thought
out of play.
over.
But
I
she
can-
thought it was out of play. So then it's the same thing. The intent
It's
is the
not the
same as what
same.
Calvin did.
But no, it doesn't. It doesn't talk about malicious intent or what your intent is. It just says intentionally interfere, which she did.
Okay, but
Well, I
and
think the
I-
problem-
Can we
I
just
think the
watch
hang
this and
up-
agree that this rule is so bad that it's causing this argument right
the
now?
hang up
Like,
here
that-
is
that's
whether
the
you
lesson.
consider it, whether you consider the action the intentionality or your
Yes.
intent the intentionality. Because you guys are arguing, Hunter is on the side of it's intentional because you meant to pick it up. Mike is arguing the side of it's not intentional because the interference part was not intentional. That's the whole argument here.
The tough part is the word interfere. Like it's just poorly written because intentionally interfere. I view it as purely the lie.
Can
I view it
ask-
as I
can I ask-
intentionally interfere with my phone by picking it up.
Can I
That's
ask
what
this
I'm viewing as
question?
intentionally
Right.
interfere.
Can I
So
ask this
it's just
question?
worded really poorly.
If I have a weird lie inside of circle and I intentionally put my hand in front of me to give me a better stance and I putt, that is against the rules, correct?
Yes.
If you're supporting
Now-
yourself, yeah.
Correct. Now I go and I putt. I'm now second scenario. I'm in a legal stance. I go and I putt. I lose balance, and I intentionally put my hand out to support myself so I don't fall on my face. Is that also a penalty?
In this inside the circle.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to display balance.
However, one I wasn't doing on purpose, and the other one I was doing on purpose. My point is, I don't think when you're looking at the rules and you're doing rules, when you start making rules where it's like, were they doing it on purpose or were they weren't doing on purpose? That's way too ambiguous. I don't
I kind
like
of
that
agree
at
with
all. It
that.
needs to be
I do.
black and white. It doesn't matter if Owen thought that was her disc or didn't think, or Calvin thought that
The
was.
word.
Just
I
don't
agree. I agree
shouldn't
that
be in
the
a rule book.
current language is ambiguous enough that I agree with Hunter that I would have officiated it the same way because the rules allow for it. But
Correct.
it
I
should
don't
be
think it's
black and
wrong.
white so that when the situation happens,
The-
Nate Heinold can stand on the call and he can point to the rules and say,
Yeah.
guys, take it up with the rule book. It's very
That's where
clear.
I think a rule was broken, but I think the right call was made in a no call because the rule is so
It could
ambiguous.
go either way.
Correct.
It could-
So it's
Exactly.
like if you can argue it till you're blue in the face and have 5 different people from the PDGA tell you 5 different things on it,
Right.
then you
Right.
can't make the call in that
That's the thing.
situation
The language,
to change
yeah,
the tournament.
The language
Yeah.
just allows for that. So yeah, I think
I'm with the people that think that no rule was broken. I could see how they could see that, but
Absolutely.
I'm also on the side too where I do think a rule is broken, and that's where it shows you that this is a bad rule and they need to
If you just had a
reword it.
rule that said if you touch someone else's disc, it's a penalty, it's just over. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and-
That is
and-
one way
I
to
just
do
don't
it.
think I don't think the word intent. Maybe there's a different way, but I feel like the word intent shouldn't be in a rule book.
Correct.
Because like
yeah.
I could drop kick your disc and be like, oh my gosh, I thought it was a pine cone, dude. I'm so sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong.
Intention. So intent's not supposed to matter in any of these rules unless the rule has intent written in that specific rule. And intentionally describing interferes. So like the intent of what you did does like you intended to pick it up, you intended not to pick it up. It's
It
only
should be
if you
malicious
intended to
interference. That should be the rule.
Unfortunately,
And if you
though-
add malicious to it, it fixes it,
We
right?
talk about
Like
this all the
again,
time.
Owen
The game,
intentionally interfered.
the
That's
game
the
of
hardest part.
golf.
I
Said
don't like
malicious. No, get rid
I-
of intent. Malicious interference.
Malicious.
Also, get rid of malicious because that's also something of where
Just
some
leave
people can
interference. Just
decide.
like if you pick
Well,
up
I mean,
someone else's
guys, at the
disc,
end of
there
the
you go.
day, the
Just
game.
don't touch someone else's disc. I mean,
That
that's
is the other
golf.
solution.
But I think the rule should be written in a way like Calvin Lundqvist definitely should not have been stroked. And I think there needs to be a way to not stroke him. I think I just think that makes sense.
We've talked about it before, but rules of golf will always have ambiguity. I mean, if you think about ball golf, like if Zach Johnson is standing and taking a practice swing and accidentally shanks the ball into the woods, this has happened. If he didn't intend to address the ball and hit it, and I think intent is mentioned in that rule book.
That's only on the tee.
It doesn't count. Well, right, but I'm just saying, like that is intent. Intent is also in the PGA rule book. Like.
Mm-hmm.
Golf is the gentleman's game. Like it's the way the rules are always going to be written. There's never going to be perfection. Now, what I will say is, in the case of this rule, yeah, it would be a little bit weird, but you could just say you can't touch somebody else's disc, and then there wouldn't be an issue. Like it would be that simple. Just don't touch their disc.
The thing, obviously, looking through these rules for this that I found the funniest is you can alter the throw of someone's disc if it's to prevent injury. So like you can just, that was going to hurt the person 50 yards behind me. So I swatted it down.
Get
Get down,
block it.
Mr. President.
Yeah, the
Taking out
spotters
this
are in
disc.
trouble.
Another rule.
I've said multiple times that like I really want to get myself in a position where I'm like at an OB line and a player I like is throwing and I can sacrifice my body to get that disc back in bounds. Like I want to be the spectator that the disc is coming out of bounds and like I just jump up and hit that thing and get it back in. I just think that'd be hilarious.
We were talking about this yesterday, and Goose brought up another rule that he looked into. Apparently, like Nate Sexton doing like the little spinny thing before he putts, that's a practice throw, and technically you can stroke him for that.
How?
What? It's always in contact with his hands, though.
It has. No, I think at some point
It's stuck in between
Him
his hands.
specifically, I think sticks to his palms.
Well, there's
stick
some
to his
people that do a little
palms.
toss.
Yeah,
You
but
think-
some people
do a
there
little
are some
toss.
people that do a little toss,
Yes,
like
yes.
walking down the fairway, tossing like a disc
Yeah.
up in the air. Technically, that's a practice
No.
stroke.
Did they change the rule
I
to
thought it
like
has
to
10
travel
meters
a
or
certain
something?
It has
amount.
to travel a certain distance now.
I think they
No.
added
Yeah,
that.
Because you couldn't toss discs back to your bag,
Yeah,
but then
they
they
I'm
made
telling
it.
you, I'm telling you, Aaron Gossage looked this rule up and was specifically talking to me. I think what you guys are thinking about is the 25 feet, and that's towards your bag.
Oh, it's only towards your bag? Like that's
Correct.
rules written? That's crazy.
Wow. Any throw that's not made is a competitive change lie, except for a throw that's made either to set aside an unused disc or to return a disc to a player and
Which
that
is
travels
neither
less
of
than 5 meters in
those.
the air. A
Correct.
drop
So
is not a practice
if you
throw.
toss it
topping
into
a
yourself-
disc
Tossing
in the
yeah,
air.
that would be a practice throw. I would agree.
And
I'd agree.
I would just say you got to slow mo the Sexton.
We
I
might
think
have to.
sometimes when he spins it, I think it's
Yeah,
out of both.
It
I
might.
think it's out of both his hands.
It
So
might.
it's just like there's
Get
a
me
lot
on
of
a
rules
car
like
with Nate Sexton.
That's very
there's a lot
funny.
of rules like this that I just thought that was funny. Aaron brought it up when we were talking about this.
Anyways, comment down below, sound off here. Let's hear your takes on the own Scoggins things. Who do you agree, disagree with? I think there's a lot of ambiguity, and that's just what kind of ends in the circular arguments that we get with this situation. All right, let's move into some big picture stuff here, just for a minute. So we got 2 events left before the playoffs. Things winding down. Sorry. So I want to know which player in MPO and FPO have the most to prove with the season drawing to a close. Obviously, certain players, in particular in MPO, have been snatching up most of the wins. So there's a lot left. A lot of players looking to grab a win, and not much left on the table. Hunter, who are your players?
So yeah, I'll start in MPO because I think MPO it's a little bit more straightforward in my opinion. I think that the player with the most to prove right now that really could use a win at one of these last few is Ricky Wysocki. And I think the playoffs count as well, but I think for Rick, Paul went through last year without a win. So to go through a second year, yeah, it's shocking, but it's not like, oh my gosh. Ricky, we haven't seen this yet. For him to go this whole year without a win, it's very jarring. And especially how he's put himself in position where he could have won a few times and not been able to do it. And so many other players around him, like Calvin, have been able to get into those positions and perform to get the win. So I think Ricky's he needs one, because if not, it's going to be a very forgettable season. In my opinion, yeah, he's had some good finishes. Yeah, he's 5th in the world, but he'll be the best player in the world without a win. And I think that's pretty shocking. Not something we really see with Ricky. The FPO one, I mean, to be honest with you, the player that needs it the most, I think, is Kristen, but I don't think she's going to be playing. So I'm just going to act like she can't be used. And I'm going to go with one that, it's out there. I think Holland Hanley needs some wins down the stretch, mainly because she performed incredible beginning of the season. Didn't win a major. And I think that if she continues slipping, she just came in 29th, I believe it was, place at Ledgestone. She finished 8th place, I believe it was, at Worlds. If she continues slipping, then you might forget about all that she did at the beginning of the season, and you might be looking at a Silva Saarinen Player of the Year. Versus if she's able to win a few times down the stretch, yeah, she'll be majorless, but I think it'll probably seal up her Player of the Year status. Yeah, she's definitely left a lot to be desired recently. Dustin, who do you think has the most to prove right now?
Yeah, I think Ricky was a good answer for MPO. That was actually my original one. So I'll take a pivot here, and I will actually take Paul Macbeth because, yes, he is in a similar boat to Ricky, where he's done pretty well at a lot of events this season, but hasn't been able to get the win. And yes, I do agree. It's facts that Hunter stated that he's already gone through a season without a win, which was last year. It was the first year he didn't have a win in 13 years. But I think that's why it makes it even more that he needs a win, because he's that much further away from success that Ricky has tasted. Obviously, Ricky has the major drought, and Macbeth has a somewhat recent Worlds performance, but Macbeth has put himself in contention to win at a few different tournaments this year. And after having a season where you didn't win, and you've put yourself in position to win, and we're seeing progress at the very least, it's like, yeah, come on, let's finally do it. I mean, this guy had such a legacy in the sport. Being this, world champion, the GOAT, all these different things. Like, I think a little bit more rides on him to prove that he can still hang with this generation of disc golfer. And then I think Hunter hit the nail on the head. Like, Kristen's comeback would have been the one to look at, but we don't know if she's even going to come back. And this is unfortunate because this is actually last week's question. So I actually picked Valerie Mandujano, and then she goes and wins Ledgestone. So that definitely hurt. But I do think her comeback story is still something to keep an eye on, because she had 2 wins in 2022 and a silver win, 2nd at US Women's, often top 10 great. Injury to start 2023, came back, had some top 10s, but never got really in contention to win. Top 15 most of 2024. This year, she's ranked 9th. She's had a lot of strong finishes leading up to her win at Ledgestone. Now she's finally won Ledgestone, and now she's in a position where she can maybe put herself in contention to be someone to look out for the future, especially with like Kristen dropping off and some of the other moving parts. Can she prove that she's a true consistent contender? I think is one to look at.
Yeah, certainly. We'll talk more about Val later, but definitely an interesting player to watch right now. Mike, what about you? What 2 players do you have your eye on?
I'm bummed. I was hoping Dustin would do a new FPO because he has the magic touch. They're going to win this next week, apparently. So I also have Ricky. I'm going to keep Ricky. Just I feel like there's a couple things that we could bring up and just kind of the general. Paul makes sense, but for me, like Paul has looked so lackluster in final rounds, and like Paul never used to be the guy that, you know, well, eventually he's gonna have a bad round. Like I'll have a buddy text me like Paul's in the lead, and my thought now is like, oh well, that's not gonna last, which is crazy because that's never the case before. So I can understand the Paul one, but for me it's still Rick. And everybody was talking about the 13-year streak for Paul last year. I haven't heard anybody mention that about Ricky this year. Ricky also has a 13-year streak of wins in either major pro tour or like tour prior to pro tour events. So he's got the exact same situation that Paul had last year that he's looking at. And Ricky's been relatively consistent. He's still fifth in the standings, but we can all agree this isn't the Ricky of old. And coupling that with how bad his major drought has been, it's just starting to look like the similar theme of Paul, of like just both of them kind of falling off of the cliff and kind of the full changing of the guard. Obviously, Gannon's the new number one player by far and large, but like gone are the days, it seems, that anyone's actually afraid looking at lead card and Paul's 2 strokes back from you or Ricky's 2 strokes back from you. Like that just isn't the case anymore. And I think Ricky still has a chance to have that be a thing if he can pull this back together. But you know, I know he hasn't had the last 3 events he's been out of the top 10, and he hasn't done that in a long time. And I know injuries are a reason for that, but at some point injuries do define careers. And I think if Ricky can't find a way to get a win here at the end of the year, I think we can kind of officially say that like the old guard is gone.
Yeah, it's the Ricky thing is happening faster than I think most people would have expected, because it's just been a very sudden drop here. Brody, all right, what are your 2 players? Anybody else? Anybody different?
No, I think you guys all named pretty much the top ones on the list here. I think Ricky's a good pick, just because of how consistent he was. You know, when Paul was kind of starting to slip a little bit or not win, and everyone was freaking out, you know, you could kind of turn to Ricky and see Ricky still winning, still finishing the top 5 a lot, and be like, nope, like older players can still play good. It's not just because you're old you can't play good. But now we're starting to see Rick go. But I think to Mike's point, I think a lot of that does have to do with his injury. I don't think he's one to probably come out and make excuses and say that's why he's struggling right now. But him as, you know, a backhand and forehand thrower, he's pretty aggressive in his lower body, and if he does have a lower body injury, that is going to cause a lot of problems, to where you're just not confident with it. You're not able to throw full power shots, and you know he's, you know, Hunter's favorite word, momentum. He's probably one of the guys that kind of builds off of that the most out of everyone. And so I think if he's going into these tournaments not feeling 100% and then not getting off to a good start, it's hard for him to kind of get anything kind of going, even though we did see him kind of battle back a little bit at Ledgestone. And I think Holland Hanley, I think that's got to be the answer, just because not the greatest performance over in the majors, right? We are looking for her to maybe get one of those or at least contend at one of those. And I think a lot of us, after her performance this past week, a lot of us went to her Instagram to see if there was some sort of injury post. Like what happened? You know, FPO field, we've kind of talked about it. It's kind of like the MPO field 10 years ago, where if you're a top player, you just go out, you play, you're going to get a top 10. To seeing her fall that far down and not make the cut is very surprising.
Yeah. Well, let's get more into that FPO field. A lot of you mentioned Holland, not been super great lately. Kristen's fall off. It's been feels like even more of the Wild West out there, because you know in years past we've had an interesting FPO division, but we've had some somewhat consistent players towards the top. The beginning of the season looked somewhat predictable, but lately it has been very, very interesting. And I think this recent event was a great picture of that. So I want to know, with Kristen's recent struggles in Holland and Evelina's forgettable worlds, and then obviously Holland followed that up with another not great performance, how would you rank the top 5 in FPO field currently? Who is best suited to finish as number 1? Where do you actually stack people up? Because I think it's getting a lot more difficult than it has been in years past. Dustin.
I mean, if I'm looking at the season cumulatively and not just like taking into account recency bias, I think you still have to say that it's a neck and neck race between Holland Handley and Silva Saarinen for number one. Yes, both missed the mark at Worlds compared to what we hoped they would do. Yes, Holland struggled at Ledgestone, but if you look at the resumes, it's hard to argue against those being your top two players. I mean, Holland's number one in the standings, 4 Elite Series wins, top 5 at every event until she got the Worlds, where she came 8th, then Ledgestone, where she obviously struggled. But yeah, just super consistent, done well at the majors for the most part. Got to be up there, complete game. Silva Saarinen, third in the DGPT standings, 3 Elite Series wins and a major. Grant, the Turku Open win had a lesser field in her Elite Series wins column, but still, all in all, we like her game. Where she's placing is good. So that's my top 2. I think you could go back and forth on who it actually is. Silva, maybe with the major when you nod it to her a little bit, but she wasn't even at Ledgestone, so that kind of makes it a little bit tough. Then Kristen, to me, is like this ghost, where you could put her in the top 5 still, because you look at her resume for the season, even after DNFing Worlds, she was placing top 6 or better at every single tournament, including 3 wins and second place finishes at a couple of majors. Like, even with all the struggles, she still looked like a top 5 player in the world, in my opinion. But then after that, I think the next 5 people you have to consider are Missy Gannon, Evelina Salonen, Ella, Own, and Cadence. I think that's the next people you probably start considering to put in. Missy has a major win, another elite win, so she's up there. Evelina also has a major and another elite win, so those 2 are probably up there. But then Own just won Worlds, and she's the consistent top 10 finisher. So I think if it were me, I'd probably go Silva, Holland, and then I'd probably have to just take Kristen out because she's not playing, and then I'd probably go Missy, Evelina, Own.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, it gets very crowded there towards the bottom of this top 5, certainly. Mike, how do you stack things up?
Well, I think first off, the fact that we can have this topic and have a bunch of different answers is awesome. Like, because a few years ago we probably couldn't have. It was so jam packed at the top, and I think now there's some parity, which is amazing. Kristen wouldn't be in my top 5 even if she was playing next week. I'm treating this as like a power ranking. The most likely I think would be in contention, and I think there's at least 5 people ahead of her. So 5th I have Candace. Obviously, her last 2 events weren't so hot, but prior to that, she popped up a 3rd, 2nd, 1st, and 2nd in 4 straight events. So she's clearly capable. If she was in the hunt next week, I would not be surprised at all. 4, I have Evelina. Again, not great in the last 2 majors, but prior to that, we can't forget she won 3 straight events, and any given weekend she can win pretty easily if she just putts better than like 10% of the field. So I think she needs to be here. I've owned 3rd, and she's shown lately that especially in the FPO, putting is so important. And gone are the days, at least for me, that I say, well, I don't really like Own at this course. Like, I don't pick and choose based on the course. Like, she's proving she can contend anywhere, and obviously some places better than others, but there's some places she won this year that she probably shouldn't have. So I think she's really found her form really well. Holland, I have 2. She didn't play the majors well. Again, kind of a theme for all of these players, but she was a number 1 for me prior to that. Last week was shocking, but I'm not going to hold that against her just for 1 week. If she doesn't finish well this next week, I probably would push her down to like 4th behind Own and Evelina. And then I do have Silva 1st. She's the most consistent of the group right now. Before Kristen was having all her woes, we were talking about Silva kind of being the one that battles with Kristen, and that was at the top. And there's been a lot of movement that's happened since then, but Silva's been very consistent. And if I had to pick one person for the next event, it's going to be Silva.
Yeah, she seems like maybe the last name that we can throw around with the word consistent right now in the FPO division. Brody, how do you see things? You're muted.
Muted.
I am muted. Sorry. Yeah, I don't think there's any names that haven't been mentioned that could be in the top 5. So it's just kind of how you want to order them. I would have to put right now Kristen still in the top 5, just because like it'd be so hard for me to take her out. Even with the kind of the struggles that we have seen towards the end, just because like even with her like B game, she still is so much better than everyone else. And all it takes is for her to make a couple more putts, similar to Evelina right now, right? Like she almost has the same thought going into tournaments is like, all right, if Kristen putts decently inside a circle, she's going to do really well. Because we haven't seen it from off the tee or on the fairway. If you remember, she was throwing the disc very, very well. It's just always been the putting now, not being able to figure it out. I think Silva number 1 makes a lot of sense. I think maybe Ella has like an argument to like maybe sneaky in there somewhere, but I wouldn't put her up there. I like Holland at number 2, but I'm kind of with Mike too, of where kind of maybe on a short leash, seeing how she does over these next couple of events of like, is this a trend of something's going on and we don't know? Or is this just like a bad month and now we're going on to the next one? Missy is like a kind of a quiet person. I don't think a lot of people have talked about too much. And I think she could have had actually a better Worlds if it wasn't for that one hole. So I'd probably put her in my top 5 with own Scoggins as well.
Yeah, Missy's come on a little bit stronger the back half of the season here. And I think the beginning of her year was also okay. And, you know, she took on a major, but she's had a little more consistency issues than I think normally, which has been a little bit of an odd season for her. All right, Hunter, wrap it up for us. How do you see your top 5?
Oh boy, I thought about this one quite a bit because I think of rankings as like basically going into the next week, who are the top 5 players I'm expecting to perform. All right, because standings wise, I think Holland Hanley 1 or 2, absolutely. But when I look at the recent body of work, right, Holland terrifies me. I think something's going on. I mean, she was consistent, you know, always inside the top 5. Obviously, at the European Disc Golf Festival, she finished in the top 5. I really think that was her major to win, in my opinion. I was like, surely she's going to do good at Worlds. 8th, Ledgestone, all of a sudden 29th. What the heck's going on? Like, you have to try to play that bad if you're Holland Hanley to come in 29th. And she didn't mention an injury. I think something's going on. Anyways, let's start with number 1, Silva Saarinen. And if I'm not picking Holland, I'm picking Silva. I think that Silva, in my opinion, is poised and in position to be the player of the year. I think that she's probably going to be the one that wins the Grippies. Unless Holland turns something around, I think it's going to go to Silva. Number 2, I am going on Scoggins. You know, she went number 1 at Worlds. She just lost in a playoff at Ledgestone. And if we're also looking going forward, she won Idlewild last year. So I think going into Idlewild, she also could have a very solid finish. And next thing you know, if we're looking at recency bias, Owen might be pushing for the number 1 player in the world. Evelina Solin, I think, does have to be my 3rd best player in the world. I think that, you know, she has her putting issues, but she can be consistent. I'm going Missy Gannon. 4. She went 7th, 8th, 5th. I think that right now I feel more confident in Missy's game than Holland. And for me, it's between Holland and Kristen for that number 5 spot. And it's a really tough one because if I think Kristen's going to play, when she was playing before she DNF'd at Worlds, she was still going 6th, 2nd, 5th, 2nd. And when you look at Holland, obviously recently she's been going 5th, 8th, 29th. We haven't seen that 29th out of Kristen other than the DNF, but considering I don't think she's going to play, I'll let Holland live at number 5 with hopes that she wins next week and jumps back up to number 2.
Yeah, a lot harsher,
You can't
obviously.
come in 29th.
But
You
yeah,
can't come in 29th.
it's 29th is pretty egregious.
75th in MPO. You can't do it.
Yeah, it's 29th is pretty egregious. Missing the cut there, it does, like, it's hard to believe that something didn't happen that would lead to such a performance.
I will say this about Holland really quickly. Like, let's be frank, like the courses she struggled at to have these rough finishes lately are Northwood Black and the Monster.
Sunset Hill.
And
She
Sunset
sucks at
Hills.
Hill.
Did she
should
suck at Sunset that
destroy-
bad?
She shot 4
shot
over.
She should destroy Sunset Hill.
I just know that she has good history at
Because I
Throw
would agree
Pink,
with
which
you,
is coming
Dustin.
up.
If she
and-
had just sucked at Northwood, I'd have been like, you know what, that's a pass. Like, yeah, it was a
Dustin,
rough
I'm
day.
not going to name names, but there are multiple MPO players that told me they could play Sunset Hills 1,000 times. They don't know if they'd ever get a bogey.
Right.
Like,
I
it
forgot about the
was-
sunset part. I was just thinking of, like, I know she's done well at Throw Pink in the past. I know she's done well at D-Glow in the past. So there's a couple events
I
on the schedule
expect
coming
her to
up where she
perform
can do
well.
well.
She could turn it
D-Glow.
around. It was just
Yeah.
weird. Like, 29th
No, I get
is
it.
weird.
In my
Oh,
opinion,
it is 100%.
the 8th place already, I was like, man, that kind of tough pressure got to her. Then she follows it up with a 29th, and I'm like, something's going on.
And it's tough to dig yourself out of that hole. Like, when you have a tournament like that, I mean, it's tough to throw that one away.
Well,
and
I don't like that the tournament she needs to dig herself out of the hole with is Idlewild.
Yeah, tight
I don't
course.
like that
Yeah.
she's following it up with.
This is not.
That's tight.
Not a great tournament if you're not feeling great off the tee. Not a great
You got to
tournament.
survive
to
till
play.
D-Glow, and you can just chuck it out into the open a bit more.
Yeah.
What did the women play for Ledgestone last year? Was it these 2 courses or was it different?
Yes, it was just at Sunset because
She
Champions
won
Cup.
Holland won last year.
Exactly. Because
Yeah,
Champions
so-
Cup was obviously took away Northwood.
why
They
it was-
only played Sunset. Yeah.
I do think, obviously, I'm like guilty of this. I didn't put Kristen in my top 5, but looking at her stats, it is kind of funny, like how much dogging on how miserable she's played when not counting Worlds. Her worst finish was like 6th.
I'm telling you, man,
Yeah.
it's not about where you're finishing. It's like we've talked about this at FPO. It's like when you putt at an embarrassing level, and it's like it's not a shot against her because like we've all been there, but like when you make and you're on coverage and you're doing the shocking putts, and especially for her because like we're not used to this, like you just become a talking point. If she was just taking normal like fourth places and just not having a great, but when the second you miss the tap ins or you 3-putt from inside of 15 feet, it now becomes a spectacle. Like it's no longer just, oh, you had an okay tournament. Like there's something wrong at this point. So that's just kind of what happens.
Also, while we talked about this topic, I realized I didn't even give an FPO for who needs to do the best the rest of the year. So I chose Missy. She only had 2 wins this year. She had last year. So
yeah,
Missy, I think.
Hey, you know, once tour championship comes around, she'll probably win that.
True.
That's typically her MO there. All right. We got one more topic here before our final topic. We're going to talk a little bit more about Valerie Manahano because I think she's a very interesting figure in the FPO division. When you look at, you know, going back a few years, what her career trajectory was, the last few seasons, maybe being a lot quieter, and now getting another win. So I want to know, what MPO player would you comp the Legendary Champion Valerie Manahano to based on her skill set, accomplishments, and career trajectory? I want to know if you could find somebody that is kind of a good comparison, because I was just thinking about her career and the way it's gone, and I think it's kind of unique, but prove me wrong, I guess. It's because I think it's been intriguing to see, you know, when she pops up and gets wins, you know, is she continuing to kind of approach a ceiling or have potential, or is she a player that's kind of arrived? You know, how do you kind of perceive all that, Mike?
Well, you're not wrong. It was hard to compare to anybody. I looked at this for quite a while, and my answer off first glance, like I bounced it off a couple of friends and I got some weird looks, but as I explained it, they thought it at least made sense. Maybe they're trying to make me feel better. Kyle Klein. So career average finish, Val's around 10th and Kyle's 18th. Now, obviously, 18th in MPO is probably more difficult than 10th in FPO for average finish. But I think the last few years, it's been consistent, those numbers. And I think FPO is getting a bit harder to crack in the top 10. So I think that's somewhat similar. Their win rates are very similar. They both actually have 5 wins over their career. That's actually a slightly better win rate for Val with less events. Kyle has better podium percentages, but that's pretty similar as well. But I think kind of for me, what does it is they both had like 1 or 2 standout years. Kyle's had a couple 2-win seasons, and the one with the major, I think, was his best year. But been kind of quiet other than that, other than a win like every other year. And Val's the same way. She actually had a 3-win season. I believe it was 2022, and we were really talking about, like, is she the next big thing? Is she gonna finally like be the person that pushes in front of everyone? And it didn't really happen. And then she's gotten a win this year. I think she got one 2 or 3 years ago. So kind of the same story of like, there was never that consistent, when we see their top, they stay at their top. And, you know, for me, I kind of just eye test kind of like Hamis and Val as a comparison, because when Val's playing her best, she looks amazing. She looks fantastic, but it just doesn't happen that often. And that's kind of, Hamis is averaging like 25th for a finish, which is crazy for someone who gets wins on tour. But I think the Kyle is a good comparison just because they've kind of been a quiet star. Like, even when they win, they don't really pull that much. And you kind of expect them to, okay, now they got some momentum. Now they're going to do better. And then you kind of just forget about them until a year later when they win again. So that's who I have. And I like both of them too. And coincidentally enough, when I looked at the Statmando like 24-month rankings, they are both currently 9th. So
there you go. I actually really like that comp. I think that's very accurate, and I think you drew a lot of good comparisons there. Brody, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for sure, because to Mike's point, it's tough to be like, okay, let's just look at who is, you know, roughly around the same skill level as far as like finishing place goes from FPO, when we know that the MPO side's so much deeper. And I would argue like Kyle Klein is very much more on a higher level than I would put Val on the FPO side, because Kyle Klein is in the mix for a lot of big tournaments. And you know, I think sometimes we just completely forget about Val. And I'm going to go more on the side of like their skill set, because I think that's more fascinating to see who she comps with on the MPO side for like what she's capable of as a thrower. So when I look at Val, great backhand angle control, right? She can throw hyzer flips She can throw turnover shots, really great backhand angle control, no forehand, great putter, very solid putter. And it doesn't really have the distance to compete at a lot of events. So there's, depending on what courses you play, going to make her tougher. So the names that jump out at me initially was like an Andrew Presnell, kind of where really good putter, really good backhand guy, can carve a lot of fairways, doesn't have the greatest distance, but decent. Another person that kind of jumps out like in another way is like Marweed, where it's like great putter, but instead of like not having the backhand, or sorry, not having the forehand, he doesn't really necessarily have the backhand. His forehand is kind of his weapon. So I think those two people might work as a decent comp as far as the skill set goes.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Those are reasonable for the skill set comp. Hunter, how did you piece this one together?
I was trying to look at this more from a storyline comp, because I think the big thing with Val is
we all did different ones.
She's coming up, right? She seems like she's the emerging player. She has some wins. All of a sudden, she's kind of arrived. Injury happens. She's gone. She's trying to rebuild back. Finally gets back to it. There was several players that I thought worked well. Problem, they had majors, and I think that's the big one against Mike's. Is Kyle Klein's a USDGC winner. Val's never won a major. I think that's a big separator. I also think statistically, it's not fair to go MPO to FPO because I think that it's really hard to compare those two. So when we look at stories, I'll be honest with you, one stood out. It's just missing the comeback arc. Because I think that when I look at Val, she was a player where it was like the up and comer. Could she start to challenge the top? Could she start to get some wins? She did. All of a sudden, injury. She kind of disappears. Everyone forgot about her a little bit. She starts to come back, and you weren't surprised to see her win. I think that's the key. Is like it wasn't like a what? Valerie Mandujano won. So my comp is Cole Redolin. I think he was a player who was an up-and-coming player. He, came out similar time frame, won Ledgestone. We were like, oh, this guy's up and coming. Injury last year, kind of disappeared from the scene. He got 8th at Cascade Challenge, and I think had he won that event, none of us would have been shocked. Heck, I might have even said, watch out for him going into that event. So I think that's a pretty similar guy where he was bursting onto the scene. We're like, oh, is he kind of here to stay? We don't know. He's an up-and-comer. Injury makes us all forget about him. And then he's reemerging, and I don't think any of us would be shocked if Cole Redolin went on to win Idlewild this weekend.
That's a good comp.
Yeah, that is a good comp. I feel like he's getting pretty close to. I would be shocked isn't the right word. I would be surprised. I would definitely be a little surprised just because he's spent. Only because the MPO field is stronger, though. I think you are right. It's just the fact that the MPO field is so hard to break into right now. Whereas, like, if FPO was like that and Val got the win, maybe I'd feel a certain way. But that's a good. I mean, with the injury and everything, like that's a pretty good comp.
6 top 25s this year, including the 8th at the Cascade Challenge and a 15th at the major this year.
Yeah, he's definitely
more relevant than you might think.
Yeah, he's been around. That's an interesting comp. Okay, Dustin, let's hear who you got.
I'm scared I'm gonna get ripped on this one, but I gave it my best shot. All right. So I'll just say it at the top, I picked Chris Dickerson. And the reason why I picked Chris Dickerson is both of these players, their last win was in 2022 up until Valerie won Ledgestone. So kind of similar as far as when their last win was. Also, both of them don't really get the big storylines, don't get really talked about a whole lot, but sneakily are finishing pretty well, pretty consistently across the year. Like, yes, Dickerson's had a couple of blunders this year, I'll be honest, but he's also had a lot of solid finishes as well. And when you look at Valerie Mandujano this year, when she was kind of making her way to the Ledgestone win, you weren't really talking about her a whole lot, but she was getting like 6th place finishes pretty regularly or just placing in the top 10 on a pretty consistent basis. So there's that. Also, both of them had to deal with injury comebacks. Obviously, Valerie, had the ankle injury at the beginning of 2023, kind of made her come back from that. Dickerson's kind of just in that process. He had a hip injury last year, one that we thought might be career-ending, like the type of injury that he had if it would have been the necrotic thing that they were thinking about. Like, he may not have been able to play disc golf again, but luckily it wound up not being that case. They're also both backhand dominant, though Dickerson does have a forehand, agreed. Both of them are known for their accuracy and their angle control. Both of them are known for being strong players in the woods. Both of them are known for being able to be pretty solid putters. And when you adjust for like the field size and kind of see where they're finishing and where they're ranking at, it's really not all that different. And they're also very similar when it comes to like fairway hits, putting stats, things of that nature. Like it's there. Like I can kind of see it a little bit. So that's who I went with, just off the style, off the sneakily, being successful, dealing with injury, how long they were to their last win. I just kind of saw some storyline similarities there.
I would agree in the sense that he would be another player where I think Dickerson winning a tournament would feel the exact level of surprise as Val winning a tournament. If Dickerson won, you'd probably feel a very similar way, where it's like, yeah, we knew that that was a capable player winning in this division. It's just been a while. He does have a lot more history, though, and obviously a lot more.
Dickerson and
the biggest
Eagle
difference.
were the two that came to my mind, but
Yeah.
both of them I was like, but like Dickerson in 20, I think it was
In
like
their
2020,
prime,
like they arrived more
right.
than Val ever
Dickerson
arrived.
was
the
a
hard
top
part.
3 guy for like
But I think-
2 seasons.
Yeah, I do agree that Dickerson, as far as like story arc since then, is like he was the
Yeah.
first guy my mind went to. I was just scared because he
Those are
was too good recently. Or
Those are great comps. Those are very good. I really
Does he have
liked-
1 or 2 majors?
Dickerson.
Dickerson has
just-
2 Champions Cup and USDGC.
Yeah, he took the first Champions
two.
Cup and he took a USDGC. Yeah, interesting career. And he also, I believe, he might have he either has 1 or 2 Pro Tour
I
championships.
believe he has 2.
I think
He won
has
them
2.
early on. I think he at least won the 2016. Did he win the first one? He won them when they were giving out like silver jackets. I don't know if they still
he
do
won
that.
a couple early. So yeah, he has some big wins. All right, let's move on to our
2018,
final
2019
topic
were his.
here.
18, 19. There you go.
Hunter
Jeez.
and Mike, this is a fan submitted topic. They wrote this. So if we compare disc golf to professional baseball, football, basketball, or hockey in terms of their eras and history, where is disc golf right now? Using the NBA as an example, are we in the Wilt Chamberlain era, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Magic Johnson era, etc.? So I guess you could use whatever sport you wanted, but kind of placing disc golf in an era compared to these other pro sports, where would you have us place? You guys are tied at 14 right now. So let's just say, Mike, pick a number between 1 and 10.
6.
Hunter,
5.
number was 6. So Mike,
Dang it! Why'd
make
you
a-
even let me pick? That was mean.
theatrics. Yeah, that is kind of mean. Hey, you could have taken 6 as well, man.
I didn't know that was an
Double
option.
tiebreaker.
That'd be crazy.
All right, Mike, you may go first.
I don't know if I want to. That's fine. I actually did. So I didn't make any bullet points or notes for this question. It's a great question, but I kind of just had trouble answering it. Dang it. I secretly was kind of hoping I wouldn't get this far,
Well,
but
you
it's
can
fine.
play off of Hunter then. This is a strategy.
I'm going.
All right, go for it.
All right. So I think this is like a big on the fence response. I'm going to use basketball. I think basketball is the easiest because there are predefined eras, and it is a team sport, obviously, but of all the team sports, I feel like one person can like change the arc of a team more than any of the other team sports. So I think it's fine. I mean, I definitely think that Ken Climo's like the Bill Russell, the guy who won everything, but won against like just no one essentially. But also it's weird because for some reason, basketball is the only sport we pretend everyone's as good as or back then as they are now. I don't know why that has happened. Like every other sport, everyone's acknowledging like, oh, wow, like in baseball, they used to only throw 90 and now 5 people on the team are throwing 100. But for some reason in basketball, all the basketball old heads think everybody from the 70s, 80s, 90s are just as good as the players now, but whatever. So we got Climo is like Bill Russell era. I think it's hard because I think Paul could be Jordan, but I think Gannon could be too. It's hard to tell because I think that Jordan was playing against very good people, obviously. And if Gannon continues to do what he's doing against this good of a field, there's not really a comp in like a basketball example. If Gannon continues to be at the highest level but doesn't win a bunch of majors, then it's perfect. He's the LeBron, and we can talk about, well, skill versus accolades. Where are we at? I just think that it's hard. Like Paul's the Jordan comp because he, as close as anyone's going to do, brought disc golf to people who don't care that much about disc golf. It was like the fringe people who kind of cared. Paul brought them in. No one's going to make someone who doesn't care about disc golf care about disc golf. It's just not going to happen. But I think Paul did that, kind of made it global, kind of made it more widespread. And so I think he's the Jordan comp. And I think now we're kind of in that post-Jordan comp of like the Kobe's, the Shaqs, like multiple people are kind of getting their pieces. There's not one specific guy like showing it, but then LeBron comes along and just like, oh, wow, like this guy's clearly better than anyone's ever been, but can he win what we expect him to win? And so like if 8 years from now, Gannon only has 4, 5, 6, 7 majors, then it's clear to me that he's a better player, but he didn't do what Paul did. So we're going to have that debate on like, who's the GOAT.
Yeah, always tough to, argue up to recent time because you don't have that precedent in front of things. Hunter, how do you see it? Where do you have us?
I'll be straight with you. I also wanted to avoid getting to the finals because I have no freaking clue.
Love
This question's
that.
impossible. I wanted to use basketball, but since he used basketball, I'll use golf because I think that's a little easier comp. The tough thing here is where the heck do you start? Because I think Ken Climo is obviously like the player to start with, right? And if you just go golf, Ken Climo to Walter Hagen, but now the problem is where does Paul Macbeth come in? Because then are you saying the like, you know, Avery Jenkins, EMAC of the world, or the Sam Snead, Ben Hogan? That doesn't make sense to me. So then you almost have to go farther back to be like steady edge Walter Hagen, even though he didn't really like, there wasn't a tour. Because here's the tough part, right? And I think Paul Macbeth is the key piece of this whole puzzle. And if Paul Macbeth is our Tiger Woods, then I think that makes sense. Then we make Ken Climo or Jack Nicklaus, right? Like I think that makes sense. Nicklaus, if you will. I think that makes sense. But it's tough to know how far disc golf is going to go to know if Paul was truly Tiger Woods. Because if disc golf from here, basically like, okay, we've reached our COVID era, we reached the non-disc golfers, right? And Paul was the face that kind of made disc golf cool, if you will. He was the one that kind of reached outside of it, made it feel more professional. He was the first guy to like wear polos on the course, so on and so forth. Then yeah, Paul's the Tiger Woods. And now we're probably looking at Gannon Buhr as Scotty Scheffler, right? That's probably where we are. But if disc golf does have that second boom, then there's not Tiger Woods yet. And we are looking at Ken Climo as Walter Hagen, and you're probably looking at Paul Macbeth as Ben Hogan, and you're probably looking at freaking Gannon Buhr as Jack Nicklaus or something, and Tiger Woods is coming. So I think most likely where we're at is Paul Macbeth, Tiger Woods, Gannon Buhr, Scotty Scheffler, and that's kind of where we're in the modern era. I think that's probably most likely where I would land us at.
Well, right. You can only kind of guesstimate based on what we know at this point. I think with the golf comp, like that works, and similar to Mike's basketball analogy too. It does get harder when these sports are so old, and like you talk about the Climo and Paul era and the fact that they basically overlapped, and so like to say, you know, like, okay, then he kind of has to be, you know, even Jack Nicklaus is well before Tiger. So it's a weird argument there. And then as far as like like, have we got our Tiger Woods yet? You know, it's hard to say if somebody's going to come along and for golf, for example, like if we put golf against its own scale, if Tiger is the guy who brought golf to this new stage, we're basically saying it can never grow in popularity the way that Tiger grew it, which is probably fair to say because the world knows about golf. The world doesn't know about disc golf. So I think that's kind of the measuring stick, is like when a sport is brought in front of the world, who's the guy that ushers that in? Michael Jordan ushered in basketball for a lot of people. Tiger Woods certainly ushered golf for a ton of people. Paul Macbeth at this moment is the guy who ushered in the biggest wave of disc golfers that has been ushered to the sport.
I think the tough part is like Tiger did it himself, right?
Yeah.
Obviously. But Paul was the guy when COVID happened. And it's just like, you aren't going to, I mean, fingers crossed, you're not going to create another COVID. Right. And so like if that boom is kind of what like you come in and there's one guy that's kind of like made disc golf cool, then that was Paul Macbeth. And if that's it, then that's Tiger Woods.
Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting that's the polarized thing about Tiger is, you mentioned like golf was a big sport, obviously. It was the way that Tiger, the swagger and style that he brought to the game that made it look different to other people. Like
that's what I feel like is the thing with Paul is disc golf doesn't have the stigma as much, but like pre-Paul, it was the hippie weed smoking sport. Yeah. Right. And like Paul he wasn't the first to do it, but he was the face of
Hunter.
Let's treat it like a professional athlete.
Jimmy Fallon and Brad Pitt literally just did a skit about disc golf being a hippie sport.
But as someone who's played it from 2015 to now, the stigma is nowhere near at the same level.
The stigma to people who don't know anything about the sport.
From the people that play it?
No, when I say disc golf to someone, I'm judged way less.
It actually has gotten better. Like
a lot better.
People at least know what you're talking about usually.
I feel like the stigma is almost closer to like youth group now than hippie weed smoking.
Yeah, it's more of just like camp activity stigma now. I will say maybe my favorite sentence.
I think it might just be hit and miss on who you talk to.
Sure, well, of course. Maybe my favorite statement ever uttered on this show was comparing EMAC and AJ to Sam Snead and
That's
Ben
where
Hogan.
the middle was, man. I just wasn't supposed to do.
That's
where the whole thing fell apart.
That was the best thing I've ever heard. Anyways, Hunter, you're our winner
Well, if
today.
you think of EMAC as a course designer, the Sam Snead comp.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, let's just like
I'm just saying.
let's butter up EMAC and
Who's
just
our
start
John
calling him the
Daly?
Sam Snead of disc golf. That's a
John
that'd just be
Daly,
great.
Big John,
Simon.
We should
Simon.
we could do a whole podcast on
Greg
golf
Barsby.
comps.
It might be Barsby.
Could be Barsby. Actually, Matt Yo might be the John Daly. Pound of
I,
feet,
think
you get-
I think it's Simon though, because you have to pick someone that's like crazy skillful.
yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
Daly had some of the best hands.
I actually do
literally
like that
in golf.
comp.
Alrighty. Well, anyways, Hunter, congratulations. Even though you had no notes, turns out your competitor didn't either. But you know what? Both of you put
Yeah, I
together
was
logical
thankful for that.
arguments.
That's
We
tough.
got skilled panelists here.
I was
They-
terrified. I was like, if I make it to the finals somehow and I go against someone with like pages of notes, I'm just gonna be like,
Bro,
what
I'm
they
the guy
said,
who was
let
one
them
point
win.
out the finals who did have pages of notes. This is
That's
tough.
tough.
It's a tough one.
That's
It's a tough
tough.
one.
Dustin, we'll pin the comment down below. You can give your entire
All right, yeah.
argument.
Yeah, I'll give the whole compare. I had it. I had
How
it down.
close were we? Were we close to where you landed?
No, you guys are off.
What sport did you do?
I did basketball, but I had it
Oh.
like nailed down to every generation of NBA. Like I had it. It's all good. Don't worry about it.
Could've been something.
You'll never know
Comments if you'd like to submit more topics like that one that we just used, you can scan the QR code here on the screen. And season's starting to wind down, so if you want to get your topics in, get them submitted. We love discussing them. Obviously,
Soon
that
you'll
was
be submitting stories for the off-season podcast.
yeah. Soon
I
to be
cannot
submitting form
wait.
reviews again. Yeah, off-season
I
podcast is a great
cannot
time. But
wait.
we'll enjoy the rest of the season while we can. There's a lot of fun events left. So make sure to tune in. We'll see you next week.